It is an honor to join you in Brazil today. I have some wonderful memories of spending time in Brazil on 2 other occasions, and maybe in the near future I will be able to visit once again. As we get going, would you do me a favor? Take out your cell phone. If you don't have a cell phone, take out a paper and a pen, because in just a moment I'm going to minimize my video and I'm going to put up on the screen some contact information for you to request a link to download this presentation and share it with your friends. So let me go ahead and minimize my screen. While you are taking out your cell phone or a pen and paper, I want to thank you for taking the time in your schedule to attend this Simple Church presentation. Deep in our hearts, we ask questions like, how can I become more effective in reaching people around me? That is what Simple Church is all about, becoming an effective, modern-day missionary. Okay, here's the contact information. This is Gabriel. Here's his phone number and his email address. He lives in Brazil, he's Portuguese speaking, and he's English speaking. Take a picture of this. Write the phone number down with a pen and a paper. Write the email address down. And afterward, you will be able to contact him and request a link to download this presentation to share with your friends. I also want to take a moment, Gabriel, to say thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time, putting in the volunteer hours to both translate this material and subtitle this recording. This tool, this resource that you have provided will be used by Brazilians, but in addition, it will be used around the world by Portuguese-speaking people. So Gabriel, thank you so much for all the work you have put into this. I want to begin with a quiz. In fact, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand. Do you recognize this logo? This is the WhatsApp logo. If you use WhatsApp, go ahead and stand. Yeah, right now, go ahead and stand if you have ever used WhatsApp. Now, this is where I wish I could be there in person and begin to look around the room to see the percentage of the people who are standing. Now, stay standing, because I'm going to ask the next question, and some more people are going to join you in standing. If you have ever used Uber or a similar service, go ahead and stand to your feet. So now we have 2 groups of people standing. We have the people who have used WhatsApp, and we have the people who have used Uber or a similar taxi-styled service. Now everybody stay standing. We're going to ask a third question. If you have ever used Airbnb, go ahead and stand with these other people. Go ahead. Don't be bashful. If you have ever used WhatsApp, Uber, or Airbnb, go ahead and stand. Now I have one last question. Continue to stand. I have one last question. Do you recognize this logo? This, yes, it is Wikipedia. If you have ever used Wikipedia on your cell phone, your tablet, or on your computer, go ahead and stand. So now we have 4 groups standing. Those that have used WhatsApp, those that have used Uber or a similar kind of service, those that have used Airbnb, and those that have used Wikipedia. Now, for those of you who are standing, if you are similar to other groups I have worked with, typically 95% are standing. So look around the room. Would you say that 50% are standing? Would you say that 75%, or is it 90 or more? I'm going to guess it's over 90, probably over 95%. Now stay standing. I'm going to have you sit down in just a moment, but stay standing. For those of you who are standing, I want you to lock in this thought. You are already participating in a massive global shift, and you maybe didn't even know it. Now lock that thought in. You are already participating in a massive global shift, and most likely you didn't even know it. Okay, go ahead and sit down. And while you sit down, I am going to remove my video so that you can see the entire screen. I want to introduce you to another global shift that's taking place. It's a global trend, and it is arriving in Brazil even as we are watching this presentation. Do you recognize these 5 people? For many of us, we would recognize Ellen White. Many would recognize Billy Graham, but when it comes to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th person, even in America, most people don't recognize these people. But I'm going to introduce you to them. And the reason is because they all contribute some research on this global shift that is taking place around the world. As early as 1911, research indicates that millions of people will be leaving their local churches. It's in 1911 that Ellen White said this: "Before the final visitation of God's judgments upon the earth, there will be among the people of the Lord." Now notice she doesn't list any denomination. These are God's people, the people of the Lord, no matter what faith denomination they are part of. There will be among the people of the Lord such a revival of primitive godliness. Notice that word, primitive. We're going to see that come up again. Such a revival of primitive godliness as has not been witnessed since apostolic times. The Spirit and power of God will be poured out upon His children. At that time, many, now notice, she's going to say that twice, many will separate themselves from those churches in which the love of this world has supplanted love for God and His Word. Many, there it is again, many, both ministers and people, will gladly accept those great truths. Now we're going to come back to those great truths. That's referring to things like the Sabbath. When you die, you rest in the grave until Jesus comes. The sanctuary, those are the great truths that she's referring to. Many will gladly accept those great truths that God has caused to be proclaimed at this time to prepare a people for the Lord's second coming. Now, I want you to notice what Mrs. White does not say. It is tempting for Adventists to say, oh, what's going to happen here is all the people who worship on Sunday are going to come into our Adventist churches, and we're just waiting for that to happen. But that's not what she says. She says, among the people of God, there's going to be a revival. Many will separate from their churches. And it doesn't matter what denomination it is, if it has grown cold, they will separate from it. And these people, wherever they are, whoever they are, will accept those great truths that God is preparing His people for. That was in 1911, and Ellen White gives this prediction. Fast forward to 1965. Now keep in mind, the United States is a churched culture. Most people still go to church in 1965. But Billy Graham gives a warning. Notice what he says. Multitudes of Christians within the church are moving towards the point where they may reject the institution that we call the church. They are beginning to turn to more simplified forms of worship. Notice the term simplified. Ellen White used the term primitive godliness. Billy Graham is talking about the same concept, a simple form, a simplified form of worship. They are hungry for a personal and vital experience with Jesus Christ. They want a heartwarming personal faith. And unless the church quickly recovers its authoritative biblical message, here's Billy Graham's warning. We may witness the spectacle of millions of Christians going outside the institutional church to find spiritual food. This is a warning. 1965. The question is, has it or is it coming true? In 1911, Ellen White gives a prediction that this was going to happen. In 1965, Billy Graham gives a major warning saying we may see millions of people leaving the church. It's not until 2005 when George Barna puts out a book called Revolution. And for the first time in scholarly research, he states that 20 million Christians left the church to go find God. 20 million. Fast forward to 2015. George Barna and Joshua Packard redo the research and update the numbers. Joshua Packard put in writing in his book, Church Refugees, sociologists reveal why people are done with church but not their faith. And in this updated research, they discovered that approximately 104 million Americans have left their local church. Do you see the trend? Ellen White predicted this in 1911. Billy Graham gives a warning in 1965. George Barna gives us actual, hard, factual evidence in 2005. In 2015, they redo the research and they discovered that 20 million has increased to 104 million. But you ask, who are these 104 million people? Are they people who were just mad at the pastor? They didn't like the church? Did they have a chip on their shoulder? What's going on? Here's what Joshua Packard says in his book. Our interviews indicate that the de-churched are among the most dedicated people in any congregation. They often work themselves into positions of leadership in an attempt to fix the things about the church that dissatisfy them before ultimately deciding that their energies could be better spent elsewhere. In other words, the de-churched were the doers in their congregation. Who are the doers? These are the elders, the deacons, the deaconesses, the Sunday school teachers. In our case, the Sabbath school teachers. These are the people who organize and put together every week, week after week, the church service. These are the doers, and it is these people that are concluding that the conventional church is no longer effective in its mission. And so they are leaving the church. But where are they going? Well, they discovered that. They are going to informal gatherings, which include house churches. Notice the second paragraph. As our society approaches a post-institutional era, it's entirely possible the near monopoly that the church has enjoyed over faithful expressions and religious connections may be coming to an end. The activities of the de-churched may be ushering in a new understanding of what religious activity means. if this trend continues, it will fundamentally reshape the way Americans experience organized religion. And I am going to suggest to you, it will fundamentally reshape the way Brazilians experience the future of what church is going to become. It was Alan Hirsch who actually now says 60% of your neighbors will not walk in to a conventional church. They're just simply done. So what we have is we have the churched people, the doers, leaving the church by the millions. And we have the secular, unchurched people in our culture unwilling to come into the church. So putting all this together, we are facing a major crisis. Church is declining extremely fast. And so the question becomes a missionary question. What about the 60%? How do we reach secular and unchurched people with the everlasting gospel? Now I want to emphasize a couple points. This massive mega shift in church attendance is not necessarily the church's fault. This mega shift is also happening in secular areas. We already took the quiz, and we realized that many people in Brazil use WhatsApp, use Uber, Airbnb, and Wikipedia. And for that group that stood, you are already participating in this massive cultural shift. This massive cultural shift now includes a shift of people moving away from conventional churches into house churches. Now you may be tempted to say, oh, we're in Brazil, we're in South America, we're in Central America. We're safe from this trend. Most of the trends begin in Western Europe. In fact, almost every year, I'm in Western Europe for about a month. In Western Europe, on average, 3% of the population goes to church on a given weekend. That trend has moved to North America, and I would include Australia and New Zealand. In North America, on average, 13% of our culture goes to church on a given weekend. Now, there's one exception to this statistic. If you are a first or second generation immigrant into North America, you are most likely still attending a conventional church. And that is simply because in the global South, there is still a strong value to attend a local church. But once a first or generation immigrant becomes a third generation, that would be their grandchildren. It does not matter what nationality you are or what country you have come from. Third generations no longer attend church. It is going to take another 10 to 15 years for that cultural trend to shift to the global South. But I'm suggesting to you today, it has already shifted there. Especially if you're under the age of 30, we might even push that up to 35 or 40. The younger generations, because of the internet and being connected to the internet and the westernized movies, are being retrained. And in the global South, in South America, in Brazil, you are experiencing, even if you don't recognize it yet, a shift where the younger and the young professionals are disengaging from the local churches. To put some numbers on this, I went to the Adventist Statistics webpage and pulled some graphs, which I'm going to highlight very quickly. Notice the year 2012. This is the Trans-European Division. Beginning in 2012, there is a downward church growth trend. Let's look at the North American division. The year 2012. It's a slight decline, but then in the year 2016, the decline is drastic. These are the church growth trends. This is what we are seeing. This massive global shift moved from Western Europe to North America. But now let's go to South America. Look at the year 2012. Look what's happening in the South American division within the Seventh-day Adventist Church. There is a decline in church growth. Now let's pull the statistics from the General Conference Adventist Statistics website for the Central Brazil Union Conference. It's interesting to me that in 2012 we see an upward growth. But then we hit the year 2015, and that begins a downward slope. I am going to suggest to you that that is not going to change. It's going to continue to decline. And again, I want to remind us, this is not necessarily the church's fault. This is because this massive global shift away from institutions to organic and grassroots venues is now impacting the local church. So let's step back and look at a big picture. Why should I start a simple church? I've just given you all the evidence. We started in 1911 with Mrs. White's prediction that this trend was coming. We went to 1965 where Billy Graham gave America a major warning saying we will probably see millions of Americans leaving the local churches. We looked at the research data in 2005 and then again in 2015, where we are now seeing millions of Americans leaving their local churches. And we see the secular unchurched no longer willing to even attend local churches. Christianity is in crisis, and these trends have arrived in Brazil and South America. So we can do one of three things. We can pretend that they don't exist and just keep on doing what we've been doing for the last 150 years. Or we can deny these trends and we can fight against them. The third option is to study these trends and retool, realizing that the way we are going to reach the modern mission field around us is not going to be through a conventional church model. I'm suggesting today that because the mission field has changed so drastically, which is what Mrs. White predicted back in 1911, the future of church is going to move into simple house churches. That is why it is so important that we learn how to become effective missionaries using house churches, what we call simple church. But at this point, a lot of people say, where does this idea come from? Is there a biblical foundation? Does Mrs. White have anything to say about it? And if the New Testament was a house church model, how did we get to a brick and mortar model where we pay professionals to oversee the churches? So we're going to give you a condensed summary of those next 3 points. If you have your Bibles, you might want to open them, or you can just take pictures of these screens. In Romans, Paul writes, "Please give my greetings to the church that meets in their house." Now notice this is Paul. We're going to come back to this later. In Corinthians, Paul again writes, "Give my greetings to those who gather in their home for church meetings." What this is beginning to tell us is that the New Testament was a network of house churches. Or we read in Colossians, "Please give my greetings to those who meet in her house." Again in Philemon. This letter is from Paul. I am writing to the church that meets in your house. While I was working on my doctoral work at Andrews University on this topic of house churches, I made a fascinating discovery. The Gospel of Luke opens with a scene in the Temple of Jerusalem, and Luke ends with a scene in that same temple. But then the book of Acts, which is also written by Luke, begins in a house in Jerusalem and ends in a house in Rome. This was a shift. It was a shift away from the temple concept to the house church concept. I'm going to unpack that a little bit more when I tell the story. But one thing that was extremely clear for the New Testament was why they existed. They knew what their job description was, and they set out to do that. Let's read it. It's familiar to all of us. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. Number 1, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And number 2, teaching these new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you. And then number 3, there's a promise that Jesus gives. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. The New Testament believers were clear. This was their job description. They knew what they were to do. They knew they were to go out and make disciples, baptizing them, teaching them, and then they hung on to the promise that Jesus gave, I am with you always to the very end. Now let me ask a question. If you were to ask them, how does the gospel commission begin? What would most people say? Well, you're correct. Most people would say, go. The gospel commission begins with the word go and make disciples. Well, that's not true. Yes, it does include the word go, but that's not the beginning of the gospel commission. The beginning of it is where Jesus says, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, you are to go and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them. This gospel commission stands exclusively on the authority of Jesus Christ. Let's look at some additional research. This comes from the books Acts of the Apostles and The Desire of Ages. Looking at the second paragraph, Acts of the Apostles, page 20. Christ sought to teach the disciples the truth that in God's kingdom there are no territorial lines. Now look at the first paragraph. Jesus came and told his disciples, I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations. This is key. This is important. Often, churches and denominations work in a territorial concept. But in the heart of the gospel commission, Jesus tells us as the believers, we are to make disciples of all nations. That means there are no territorial lines. Continuing on in Desire of Ages now, there is no place for traditions, for man's theories and conclusions, or for church legislation. No laws ordained by ecclesiastical authorities, that's the church leaders, no laws ordained by the ecclesiastical authority are included in the commission, the gospel commission. None of these are Christ's servants to teach. This is incredible. What Ellen White is telling us is in the heart of the gospel commission, No church, no denomination, no church leaders are to add or restrict by adding additional laws or restrictions to the heart of the Gospel Commission. The Gospel Commission came from Jesus Christ himself, and it is exclusively based on the authority of Jesus Christ, nobody else. Going back to Acts of the Apostles, those who stand as leaders in the church of God are to realize that the Savior's commission, that's the Gospel Commission in Matthew 28, the Savior's commission is given to all who believe in His name. What is Ellen White saying? It's not given to pastors. It's not given to conference leaders. It's given to all who believe in Christ's name. That's you. That's the laity. Jesus gave the Gospel Commission, and the job description included in the job description, He gave it to the laity. Let's go back to Desire of Ages. The Gospel Commission had been given to the 12, and some people would say that the 12 are the equivalent of today's pastors and priests. But notice what Ellen White clarifies. The Gospel Commission had been given to the 12 when Christ met with them in the upper chamber. But it, the Gospel Commission, was now to be given to a large number. At the meeting on the mountain in Galilee, all the believers, that's the laity, all the believers who could be gathered together were assembled. And Jesus gives the Gospel Commission and the job description within the Gospel Commission. Jesus gives it to the laity. Continuing on a couple pages later in the Desire of Ages, Ellen White says this. The Savior's commission, so we're still talking about the Gospel Commission, to the disciples included all the believers. It includes all believers in Christ to the end of time. So that includes you. That includes all the laity. There's no exceptions. It is a fatal mistake to suppose that the work of saving souls depends alone on the ordained minister. Now, I am an ordained Seventh-day Adventist minister. Now, I want you to notice that term ordained, because we're going to see it again, but in a different context. Continuing on, all to whom the heavenly inspiration has come are put in trust with the gospel. Now, here's the key point I want you to notice. All who receive the life of Christ. When do we receive the life of Christ? Is it only pastors that receive the life of Christ? No. When any believer, when any layperson receives Christ's life, is baptized and raised from that watery grave, that's when we proclaim to the world, we have received the life of Christ. Ellen White says, all who receive the life of Christ are ordained. That means you as a layperson, you are ordained when you were baptized to fulfill the Gospel Commission based on the authority of Jesus Christ alone. Any other policies, any other rules that hinder you from fulfilling the Gospel Commission that Jesus gave you, as we looked at earlier, Ellen White said there is no place for that in the Gospel Commission. You as a layperson are ordained to work for the salvation of your fellow men. For this work, the church was established, and all who take upon themselves its sacred vows. That's referring to those great truths that Ellen White talked about in 1911 when we looked at her prediction. When you take upon yourselves the sacred vows, you are thereby pledged to be co-workers with who? Now this is important. You are a co-worker with Jesus Christ. That is who your boss is. That is who your leader is. And it's on the authority of Jesus Christ. When you are baptized and raised from that watery grave, you are ordained as a layperson to go out to make disciples, baptizing them in the name of God, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, and to teach them to obey everything Jesus has commanded us. The New Testament church was crystal clear on this. It has only been over the last 1,500 years, which I will tell the story in a few moments, that a lot of church and ecclesiastical rules and restrictions have been added, limiting the work of the laity. This is why in the medical ministry, Ellen White is able to write, "Upon all who believe, God has placed a burden of raising up churches." That means you as a layperson, you are qualified, you are ordained by Jesus Christ Himself to raise up churches. Simple Church is making it possible for all of us to accept God's invitation to join Him in His missionary work as an ordained layperson and plant house churches. So with that background, the biblical foundation, the New Testament, was a massive network of house churches. We've looked at Ellen White's additional comments on who the gospel commission was given to. It was given by the authority of Jesus Christ to the lay people. And Ellen White says that as a layperson, you are ordained to fulfill the gospel commission. But then the question becomes, how did we get from a New Testament house church paradigm, how did it change to a brick and mortar paradigm where we hire pastors and priests to be in charge of the church? I'm going to condense my doctoral dissertation, at least a portion of my doctoral dissertation. I'm not going to be able to tell the whole story, but I'm going to hit the highlights. Paul's education. Remember Paul? He was the one that we looked at in Scripture, where he says, "Greet so-and-so who meet in your house for church." Paul's education and background. What was his background? He was a Pharisee. He was trained in the Jewish system. In today's world, Paul would have been the conference president. No, he would have been the general conference president. He would have been the chair with a PhD of the seminary. This is who Paul was. Paul's education and his background would have given him every reason to build public places of worship. But instead of constructing church buildings, Paul creates a network of house churches throughout the Roman Empire. Between 100 AD and 300 AD, Christianity grew from 25,000 to 20 million people in the Roman Empire. There were no seminaries, no settled pastors, or Christian public places of worship. In fact, much of our New Testament was written to people who met in house churches. Since history records that persecution is often led to house church development, it is tempting to think that New Testament house churches were the result of persecution. That is a misunderstanding. Early Christian house churches were patterned after house synagogues, which were numerous. Christians, and Paul, took a familiar model and adapted it to their new Christian context. And what I discovered in my doctoral work is that there were tens of thousands of house synagogues. But you ask, then why do we only read about the public synagogues in the Bible? And there's a very simple answer. Public synagogues were clustered at what we would consider today universities. So at your local Adventist university, you have a university church. That would have been a public synagogue. At Andrews University, we have a university church. That would have been considered a public synagogues. But most of the country, where there were no universities close by, there were tens of thousands of house synagogues. And the reason we only read about the public synagogues in the New Testament is that's where headlines happened. That's where the debates happened. That's where Paul ran into difficulties. That's where Jesus was kicked out of. It was in those public venues that captured the headlines of the New Testament writers. And so as we read the New Testament, we read about public synagogues, but nobody knew what was happening in the tens of thousands of house synagogues because they were in homes. They weren't in a public venue. The communion service, sometimes called the Lord's Supper, was uniquely Christian. It did not apply to Jews, and therefore it did not fit the Jewish synagogues, whether they were house synagogues or the few public synagogues. So this special meal, which originally happened in the home, has to be part of, and was part of a full meal, has to be celebrated somewhere else. House churches are the natural place for communion to be shared. Do you recognize this person? This is a picture of the Roman Emperor Constantine. In most of our evangelistic series, we explain to people how Constantine changed Sabbath to Sunday. But we don't tell the rest of the story. I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. It was Constantine who changed lay leadership to professionalized leadership, what we call pastors and priests. The theological term for this is our doctrine of the priesthood of all believers, where all the believers, the laity, make up God's people. We call it the priesthood of all believers. But Constantine did away with that, and he established a special group of pastors and priests. And to the special group, Constantine gave a job description. Only the pastors and priests could baptize. Only the pastors and priests could marry people. Only the pastors and priests could bury people. And only the pastors and priests could coordinate communion services. That job description comes from Constantine, who is marrying paganism and Christianity. It is nowhere found in the scriptures. The second thing that Constantine does is he does away with house churches, and he moves everyone into public buildings. They were called basilicas, later on cathedrals, and what we now call the church. So if I am a pagan priest conducting worship services in my pagan temple on Sunday, and I want to keep my job in the new empire where Constantine has just become a Christian, I must become a Christian priest. So whether or not I believe it, I have to politically become a Christian priest because Constantine is marrying paganism and Christianity. But this is a win-win for a pagan priest because now, since no one can meet in homes, they are going to come to my temple. Since Constantine did away with Sabbath and changed it to Sunday, they're all going to come on Sunday. And because he did away with the priesthood of all believers and upheld the role of pastor and priest and gave me a very special and elite job description, I am now seen as above the laity. I have been elevated above the laity. And so this was a win-win. And so Christianity now becomes, it takes place on Sunday in church buildings led by professional pastors and priests. All of this comes when Constantine marries together paganism with Christianity. The result for the last 1,500 years has been a generally accepted belief that a public building, whether it's a store, a church, a rented gymnasium, plus professional leadership, paid pastors, paid priests, Bible workers, lay pastors, plus lots of programs is what we consider real church. That is my dissertation research condensed in a short story. Now at this point, I realize that many of are saying, wow, I never understood that our model of Christianity came from paganism. But that's where it came from. The New Testament church met on Sabbath. The New Testament church worshiped in homes. And the New Testament church upheld the priesthood of all believers, which is why they were very clear that their authority for the lay people to complete the gospel commission came directly from Jesus Christ. And that is also why Christianity exploded across the Roman Empire until the church, beginning with Constantine, began to put additional restrictions on the lay people in an attempt to elevate the pastors above the laity. Well, we've talked about why should I start a simple church. We started with Ellen White's prediction in 1911. We followed that all the way through, looking at the statistics from the General Conference Adventist webpage in how in the South American division and even in Brazil, this massive global trend has arrived and church is going to continue to decline into the future. That's why we've got to start these simple churches. We looked at where this idea came from. I gave you the biblical evidence. I gave you the evidence from Ellen White's research. And I told you the story of how we got from a New Testament model to a modern day Constantinian church model. So as we wrap up, what is simple church? Well, it is exactly that, simple. It's 100% lay-led. That means it's not led or controlled by pastors, lay pastors, or church leaders. It is truly a re-empowering of the laity to do all of the work that Jesus gave you the authority to do. So it's 100% lay-led. It's in homes. Now there's a real practical reason in today's world why it's in homes. Our culture, the Brazilian culture as well, is a consumer-based culture. Any public facility, a hospital, a grocery store, a dentist office, a gymnasium, any public facility, any public building exists to provide a service for those who walk in the front doors. So when somebody walks into a church, they are walking in as a consumer. Here are the questions they are asking for. Do I like the preacher? Is he a good enough preacher? Do I like the programs here? Do I like the kids' programs? Do my friends go here? Do I like? Do you hear the common theme? It's all about me. That is consumerism dressed with Christian clothes. The DNA in today's church, any denomination, is a consumer DNA. But when you walk into a home, you bypass all of the consumerism of the culture, and people come to your home because of your friendship. That is why simple church is in homes. And it's on Sabbath morning. Well, why on Sabbath? Well, it's not competing with the Sunday churches. And it's also on Sabbath morning because simple church each simple church location is started with 4 adults. Often it's 2 families, 2 married couples, but it could be 4 singles. It could be a married couple and 2 singles. Simple church is not a place for a bunch of Adventists just to transfer into a home and wait for Jesus to come. Simple church at its core is a missionary movement. If I were to ask you on a given Sabbath in a traditional church, what percentage of the attendants are from the surrounding community, what percent would you guess? Think about your own church. Would you say 50% of the people in attendance on Sabbath morning are from the local community? Would you say 25%? Would you say 5%? I don't know what it's like in Brazil, but in North America and in Western cultures, mainly Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, less than 1% of the attendance in a conventional church on Sabbath morning, less than 1% are from the surrounding community. Most of the people who attend are members of the local church. For the last 13 years, 51% of the attendants in these homes on Sabbath morning, 51% are secular and unchurched people. And all of that is being done by lay people, common people. That is why simple church is so effective as a missionary model. Now, I realize this is very, very different from the traditional model that I grew up with. I mentioned earlier, I'm a 5th generation Seventh-day Adventist pastor. But in today's world, our question is, how do we reach the people? And that's why Jesus said, you are to go, you as the laity, you are to go out, you are to be salt. You aren't to huddle together. You are to go out into the communities and you are to raise up churches. You are ordained for this work. You have been given this work by the authority of Jesus Christ alone. Of course, the church, beginning with Constantine, tried to change this, and in most parts of the world has changed this. But simple church is a call to go back to the roots of the authority of Jesus Christ and to do as lay people what He asked us to do. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a quote from the Testimonies, Volume 7, page 25. Some of the methods used in the work, this is the work of the church, will be different from methods used in the past. But let no one, because of this, block the way by criticism. What Ellen White is telling us, especially as pastors, conference leaders, division leaders, union leaders, criticism is not an option. Christ came to die for lost people. That is why we exist. That's why the church exists. And anything that hinders that is not from the Lord. I want to introduce you quickly to our online training. For the last 13 years, we have taken all these simple church planters through some training, but it's not as complete as what I'm going to share with you now. In the simple church training, you will learn how to start a simple church in your home on Sabbath morning that is 100% lay-led. You will learn how to find secular and unchurched people. I'm going to teach you how to share your story in 15 seconds. In today's world of videos and YouTube, you don't have a lot of time to capture people's interest. Once you've captured their interest, then I'm going to teach you how to share God's story in 4 minutes. Once you have shared your story in 15 seconds and God's story in 4 minutes, that opens the door for ongoing conversations and for you to disciple those people, build a relationship with them, and eventually invite them to your home for Simple Church, or to start a Simple Church in their home. Number 4, I will teach you how to disciple these new believers to go and be missionaries. That is the secret of what makes a movement a movement. Number 5, I will teach you how to anchor these new believers in God's story and God's end-time invitation. And I will teach you how to multiply and mentor new Simple Church missionaries. I will teach you how to help other Simple Churches get started because of your influence. Well, that concludes our Simple Church introductory presentation. So contact Gabriel, ask him for a link for this presentation, and ask Gabriel for a link to set up your online Simple Church training. And that will connect you with Gabriel, and he will mentor you through the rest of the training process. Well, it has been a blessing and an honor to join you in Brazil. I will close this presentation and we'll go to the live question and answer time.